So this was 2012. It's 11 years later now, and we still have two pensions.
Uh-huh.
Okay. One thing that's happened to me during that time period is I've worked several jobs where I have a SAG contract with AFTRA terms and conditions. And one of the words that keeps coming up, breakage.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind explaining to everybody what breakage means?
I know exactly what that means, and it doesn't mean dropping your grandma's teacups. It's an antiquated term that I think originated in the recording industry, where if somebody broke an LP, or a 45, it shattered, and that's the breakage. But even when they had cassettes and things that wouldn't break when you dropped, the breakage still occurred. But in this instance, it means monies that were due you, that were supposed to be part of your retirement, go to somebody else. So here's basically what happens. When you have two separate pension plans, as we still do, even though actors were told, vote up this merger, consolidation, new union, even though it's been 11, 12 years since that happened, there are still two separate pensions. So what happens? When you arrive on a job, they tell you into which pension your producer's contribution will go. But what if it's AFTRA's pension and you don't have enough to make a pension credit? Where does that money go that was paid on your behalf? It goes to a broadcaster or recording artist. It goes to somebody else
Who didn't earn it.
And it begs the question, why don't you get to decide into which pension your money goes? I think that is effectively stealing
Theft.
from you. Right.
Theft.
Because every time, if you think about it, every time there's another negotiation for a new contract, the staff comes out and they goes, oh, we got this increase, and we got you another 0.5 percentage point on the producer's contribution. Yay. But what if you show up and they tell you that's going into a different union than you want it to? You get no money.
Yeah.
You lose. We lose. And there's no way, they say, to change that.
So was there, within this merger, was there a provision made as far as the amount of shows that, say, could be SAG or AFTRA? Wasn't there a percentage? What do you know about that?
I know that they've created a percentage of all of the shows' pension plans that needs to be given to each plan. In other words, say for every $100 that actors under SAG-AFTRA earn money, a certain percentage of it has to go to the SAG pension, and a certain percentage has to go to the AFTRA pension. Again, whether we like it or not as actors, they say, oh, this is an AFTRA pension job. Well, I don't want it to be.
Right.
Too bad, so sad. And this fancy new legal word that I learned, it's codified, which means it's been written into our Constitution. Yeah. So not only were we promised that there would be no competing plans and no more jurisdictional war.
Right.
Still, 11, 12 years later, that's still going on. And we're told they have to keep both plans alive. I'm like, why don't you let the weaker one die?
What'd they say?
That they can't do that.
Interesting.
Also, another interesting addendum to that. A friend who's also a A-list celebrity showed up to a job that he was a star on, and they told him that it was an AFTRA pension, and he said, I don't want that. And guess what happened? It was fixed. It was changed because he said, I don't want this to go into the AFTRA pension. So it goes to show you that if somebody in a position of power asks for it,
they'll get it.
They'll get it, or it'll happen. Now, I don't fault him. It just shows you that, there's a lot of finagling going on.
Right.
But for somebody who's the so-called rank and file, who might not have that kind of political clout, they'd be like, sorry.
We're powerless.
Do you want the job? We got 800 other actors here lining up to do your job. And of course, who's going to argue after that?
Right. So these pensions of ours, they make money. They have an accrual rate, right? And I believe back in 2010, our accrual rate was 3.5%, right? Something happened back then. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, well, there's something that happened a little bit before that that's important to point out, is that staff of SAG-AFTRA is now in our pension plan. When I joined Screen Actors Guild in 1991, there was an office workers union that the staff, the support staff
right.
of the union were in. And I don't know at what point that was switched over, but now the entire staff and all of the executives of SAG-AFTRA are in the SAG producers pension and health plan.
Is their pension split between the two?
No. They also don't have split earnings. Yeah, I brought that up in a board meeting. Why is it for every time an actor goes and works a job, they tell you this goes into this pension or that pension, right. But staff doesn't have that problem. It all goes into the SAG pension.
It goes into their SAG
pension.
And
a 3.5% accrual rate, as you pointed out.
But in 2010, they changed that. They lowered the accrual rate to 2% for everybody.
Except
who?
Except staff.
Except themselves.
Right. And you know what the reasoning was? And I was told this by Bob Bush, who was one of the outside counsel to the board of directors when I was on the board, is that if they lowered it, then staff might leave and go somewhere else and work for our competitors, basically. In other words, oh, don't do that. They'll turn on us and leave.
So giving them more money was better than having them sign a non-compete.
I guess, yeah. I wasn't smart or quick enough to come back with that, but it does.
It seems a little.
It is. And I'm not the only one who was on the board of directors who brought that up. But still, again, that hasn't changed. Now, let me tell you something else related to that. There are some actor members who are very supportive of staff. In fact, they're a little bit too obsequious. I'm of the mind that staff works for us as members, that's why they're there. There's been a decided spin around. Screen Actors Guild was very membership-oriented, membership-driven. Staff knew and demonstrated by their behavior that they were there to serve the membership. Not anymore. It's very corporatized. It's corporate-driven. They follow the directive of the national executive director, not the members. And some actor members are also that way. And I'm talking about people who are part of a certain political group. They're very staff-centered. They're like, oh, yay, staff. That's what they get paid to do.
Right.
One of them even shocked me. She told me that staff deserves more money, in other words, higher accrual rate, because they chose a career. They deserve more because they chose a career. And I was like,
that makes no sense.
What do you mean they chose a career? Because that's the way she saw it. And I checked in with her the following year at another convention. I'm sorry, it was 2 years later. And she doubled down on it. She said, no, I really did mean that. They deserve more because they chose a career.
You know the difference between the pension caps?
I think I do. Isn't it the after a number of years, after 20 years, they're considered retired.
Right. Well, I believe the cap for staff is $265,000. Is that right, Veronica? $265,000 is their cap, whereas the actor's cap is $96,000.
Right. Even if you want to throw in big names, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, when he retires, will only gets $96,000. That's his cap.
He can buy groceries.
But staff, which again can retire at 55 with full pension, will get $265,000 a year.
Now, isn't it also true that actors would have to get 35 years?
Well, you can't retire before 65 without having a 3% penalty per year attached. So you want to retire at, 60? That's 15% loss.
So there's another case in point of where you have staff that is running it, and we are at their whim.
Yeah.
It's not, it should be the other way around.
Earlier, you spoke about the 2011-2012 run-up to the merger and the non-disparagement agreement, the silence, the threat of punishment if you spoke up or against any of the board members or the merger itself. How did that affect, board seats? Was that involved? What else was involved?
Well, they weren't just vocally silenced by this agreement and petrified to speak against AFTRA in any way. Basically, what happened was AFTRA-centric members of Screen Actors Guild ran for both boards of directors. So you had people who wanted to merge or dissolve Screen Actors Guild run for the SAG board. In other words, they could destroy it from within. So that was actually happening at the same time. So not only did you have a board of directors of Screen Actors Guild that was forbidden to speak ill of or critical of AFTRA in this case, but you actually had AFTRA-centric members who were also on the AFTRA board, who were also on the SAG board. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Now, at that particular point in time, I'd been a part of a group called Membership First since about 2006. We put that together. We picked the name because it placed the members first.
Rightfully so.
Members First was a credit union, so we chose Membership First. So that was a new political party, so to speak, just like Restore Respect. So that's important to point out because at this time, the run-up to the new merger, there were some Membership First like-minded people who were on the board of directors. Many of them drifted away. They saw that there was really nothing they could do to oppose this, that it was basically a done deal.
They lost heart.
Yeah, they lost heart. They figured, we can't change this. The monster's too big, I thought. It really angered me. Myself and Bonnie Bartlett Daniels, and about 3 others were all that was left. Now, I was the registrant of the Membership First domain name, membershipfirst.com and .net and .org. And I said to Bonnie, I said, what do you think I should do with the website? She goes, do whatever you want. I registered it in my name initially, so legally I owned control of it, but I wanted to appeal to the group. And Bonnie said, do whatever you want. I don't care. And, basically everybody's off. So what I did was I put a manifesto on the front page saying essentially everything that the people who were neutered by the non-disparagement agreement couldn't say, were afraid to say. And good old Dave McNary, the writer from Variety, caught wind of it, read it, and he wrote a feature article about it. And so, do
you still have that article?
Oh, yeah.
Can we show that to everybody?
Okay, a lot of toupees flew off when I wrote that. But really, at that point, I didn't effing care. I was like, they really tried to destroy Screen Actors Guild in the worst way once. And they were going to try to do it again, and it really looked like it was going to stick, and it did. But I was fit to be tied. I thought, how dare you?
That's your First Amendment rights.
Exactly. And I said that to David White in a letter to him. I said, I do not consent to you abrogating my First Amendment right to free speech. And as I said before, I was glad that at that point, I wasn't on the board. My 3 years had finished, 2006, 7, and 8. So by 2008, I was a free bird, and my lips were flapping.
You should be proud of that, dude.
Thank you.
That's pretty amazing.
There's a time when you just have to speak out.
You have to.
Even when you're told to shut up.
Yeah.
And I wasn't happy with that at all.
Yeah. You had to hold them accountable. So what they presented us was a false dilemma. The reason we know it was a false dilemma is because we know what a bargaining unit is.
Exactly. We know that the bargaining unit its definition is easy to understand. It's very simple. Actors that perform in front of a camera and it's projected or manifested on a screen. That's a screen actor. That's why a screen actor is not an Actors Equity stage actor. They act on stage. Easy.
Yeah. And the reason they didn't fill out the 2-page form with the National Labor Relations Board was because they had their solution, which was merger instead. If you could sum this entire event up into one word, what would that word be?
Oh, yeah, we were bamboozled.
Yeah.
The membership was bamboozled. Yeah. I think of the that wonderful scene in The End of The Wizard of Oz when Glinda says to Dorothy, "But you've always had the power to go home." Screen Actors Guild always had the power to fix whatever so-called jurisdictional dilemma was in front of them. They did it in all the decades before, from 1933 going up to the Television Authority conflict. I think it was 52 or 53. And then there were a couple others going up to the 1970s that were easily solved by the lawyers between the two or
handled it.
The intervention of the National Labor Relations Board. There was no reason to tell the members of Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA that you have to dissolve and destroy the two unions in order to fix the problem which was
a bailout
manufactured.
Because for the bailout of...
They wanted to bail out AFTRA. They wanted to combine the two. And again, my opinion, and place themselves in a position of personal enrichment, which is what they do. You look at what the top highest paid members of staff of SAG-AFTRA are making right now.
Brian, this was amazing. I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with. I had no idea on so much of this information, and I just have such massive respect for you as a union member, and your service as a union member, and everything you did, and for speaking up for us, because it's very important, and you use your voice for that. So thank you very much, man.
Thank you. I'll just tell you one quick thing. Todd Amorte said to the room of us at in the Cagney room on the first day of the strike, he said, "The world is run by the people who show up."
Brilliant.
And if you just show up, anybody who is listening to us right now, you might be confused, you might feel helpless, just show up. And then other things will move into place.
And you'll meet other people that show up.
Exactly.
We can do it together.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Cool. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Right on.